So if you want to take flyers or make a gamble, in front of an earnings announcement, like we were talking about yesterday with Nvidia, you really have to figure out like what is your bet size. See, it's very popular now for coaches of all shapes and sizes and all the different industries to talk about consistency, right? Because behavior, you've heard me say, behavior predicts where you end up in life. So that's kind of what I'm getting at. It's my way of saying it. The problem is like the biggest problem I think most people have who watch this show is their position sizing is all over the place. It's a complete fuck all, to be frank. And I want to talk about this because if you use consistent position sizing, meaning what is your R, your risk unit, it should be a percentage of your capital. You shouldn't optimize the number of shares. That's not how it works. That's amateur land. And even if you don't want to go pro, you still have to do the things that pros do if you want to get the results that pros get, right? So you have to emulate somebody's behavior. I'm giving you all the stuff for free, as a way of giving back to the community. I don't make anything on this. So if you use a consistent position size as a percentage of your capital, not 1,000 shares of everything, not 10 contracts of whatever it is you're trading, you get to remove your bias, you see? Because now you're basically indifferent. If you're risking, say, 0.5% of your capital on any particular trade, sure, when things go berserk, like NVIDIA had done in the past, you might not make as much if you were overweight. But at the end of the day, the key here is to play superior defense. That's the job if you're going to speculate. Because the money that you're going to make is only going to look like a gain to the extent that you keep your losses small, right? And I wrote about that in Inner Voice of Trading, about how, like, if you had 5 different positions on but no real risk management, they could be all over the place, plus 25, minus 25, this and that. Portfolio didn't grow at all. And that's not going to work long term, because sooner or later, if you're taking risk, you're going to get blasted, right? And I hope you didn't go overweight with this NVIDIA earnings call a few weeks ago, because I feel like you have to go through that. That's part of the hazing process. You learn. Don't get angry about it, because no one held a gun to your head. You did it on your own, just like I did it to myself with those Intel calls that I wrote about. The audiobook you can get at the link below. So the way you remove the bias is to use a constant and a consistent bet size. That's where your consistency comes in. In my humble opinion, the where you enter, you can be as sloppy as Jimmy Page playing in the guitar, as great as his riffs were, and you'll still make a great deal of money. We make and lose our money not because you have to sniper entries. That's marketing bullshit that you hear from the TV or these platforms that want to basically get your money so that they can front run trades in front of you and direct your trades to the dark pools that they can, capture the high frequency trades off on your back. So they make you think we've got all these features, and you mistake, because they try to sell the features as benefits, but they're not. Features are just features. They're not necessarily benefits. Same with having several screens. You don't need them, but it gives you, it's like a pacifier. It's like a baby's blanket. It makes people feel comfortable for some reason. I do think if you're in the business of marketing, you can have one screen up for analytics and another one for like your email platform. That can be efficacious, but at the end of the day, the goal here is to manage risk. That's what traders do. They manage risk, right? With prices and quantity. So what you want to try to do is take into account what's the best risk unit for the risk that you're willing to take, right? That's a subjective number, so you have to pick one. If you do back testing, you can alter that and just kind of see according to certain rules. There's plenty of back testing software out there, some better than others. I try to stay out of it. But if you feel sense of greed, when you have a consistent bet size, it stops you from going stronger. If you got blasted in your NVIDIA bets, right, and not going overweight, that would have been better, because you was still lost, but you wouldn't have lost as much. And that's the key. The same thing if you're in fear. Sometimes your fear is warranted, sometimes it's unwarranted. But when you use consistent bet sizes, you don't let the forces of fear and greed psych you into or out of position sizes that you otherwise shouldn't be in. really realizing it that you have a financial goal, whatever that is, as a rate of return for the amount of time and effort that you're putting in, right? That has to add up to something. I always ask people to say, okay, if you like day trading and scalping for a couple $100, no problem. Just divide that by the number of hours that you're putting in so that you can kind of see what it is that you're actually taking home compared to minimum wage, right? The data can really help you make better decisions here. It's not to put a stick in your eye. It's just that if you don't know this, you wouldn't think to do it because you say, oh, yeah, great, I trade. I made 20K. I made 250 on the day. Like, what does that mean? What is that as a percentage of your overall capital, right? Because this is a marathon. It's not a sprint, even though sometimes you feel like, well, it's got this big earnings event. I got the FOMC coming out, and I got to make bets around that. And I feel, in all due respect to everybody, I feel like that's a mistake. I feel like trying to make big bets when you can't handicap the situation, you don't know what the probabilities are. So how could you calculate the expected values? How could you have back tested this over thousands of instances to know what the data is when each instance is unique? So by using, consistent bet size, I think that's how you get to the consistent performance. Because at that point, if everything is going to be 0.5%, whether you're trading an earnings this and that, or a regular trade based on your setup, or whether you're even doing options or futures and you're going to try to move into a different asset class, right? The constant and the consistent position sizing is going to help you out. It's going to be what saves you because it'll never let the fear or the greed get the best of you. And the behavior part predicts where you end up. So if you did that across all trades, the beautiful part then is that you don't fall in love, and I wrote about that as well. You might be really in love with AI. Certainly we had crypto and everyone had a love affair there. And those markets are largely, when you think about it, they're just super choppy. They're basically a disaster in many ways. But for some reason, the moth wants to go to the flame and you can't help yourself. It also happens when you buy into the story. If you think AI is going to be the next biggest thing. I know people who trade AI and talk about it as the second coming of Christ, and they don't even know where the AI shows up in their own lives. Like, you can't make this stuff up. They don't know where it shows up in their lives. They just totally bought into the story, So you have to be much more objective than that. You have to play judge and jury, right? You have to be, well, I was going to say like a journalist, but everyone has to be fucking editorial writers anymore, which is a gigantic snooze. I don't care about anyone's opinion about anything. Just give me the facts. I'll make my own conclusions. If you use the right position sizing, though, then every trade you become indifferent. You don't care about any one more than the other. And I know a lot of you get locked in and you're emotionally invested in the outcome of trades. When you use consistent position sizing, you can release that from you. You can release that feeling from your body, right? Some of you might want to be in that space. That's your whole attraction to trading, is to make bets and to think you're being right and all this and that. But now you're stuck in that accuracy game, not the game of mathematical expectation, which is really a completely different world. So you can forgive yourself because you might be self-taught and no one ever showed you this before. But then you could let go of holding on too tightly and staying in losers for longer periods of time. The biggest way to do that is to have a consistent bet size. If you like this video, check out this one.